is Chapter 5, Planning a Strategy to Open a Business. And this was where we'll look at analyzing the industry information that you've collected and determine the best way to enter the market. And there are 3 methods to entering the market. They're starting a new business from the ground up, they're purchasing a franchise operation, and acquiring an existing business. If you'll look in your textbook at box 5.1, it provides information to consider before starting your own business, and it looks at gaining work experience in a retail operation similar to the one you want to open. It also talks about determining your niche or specialty within the retail industry. It also looks at determining if you will start a business from scratch or if you will buy a franchise or an existing business. And it also looks at making sure you have enough capital to start the business and get through the startup phase, and also talks about creating a business plan. Looking at entry strategies, an entry strategy is the method that the entrepreneur chooses to begin ownership of business. And the entry strategy affects much of what will be needed to develop the business plan. If you buy a franchise or if you start a business from scratch, your business plan will look quite different. With all entry strategies, cost and benefits must be weighed, and the entrepreneur's vision and goals must be supported. And there's 3 primary entry strategies that I've already mentioned to open a fashion retail business, and we're going to look in detail at each of these strategies. So first we're going to look at starting a new business, and this allows you to use your imagination, passion, and efforts to lead to financial rewards, a sense of control, and accomplishment. Owning your own business has positives and negatives. Some positives are that you get to have freedom to do what you want. A negative is that you will have to spend lots of time and lots of money starting the business and getting it up and running in the startup phase. Also, a new business concept can be inspired by a hobby, a part-time work, a talent, or a passion. And a concept can also come from an observation that you made of a market need out there. It can come from a new invention, or if you have technical expertise. And opening a new business is a financially risky venture and requires a lot of work in the planning and startup phase. Now we're going to look at an example of an entrepreneurial fashion business that was started by 2 men, and the name of that business is Delia's. That was founded in 1993, and this is mentioned in your book too. And in 1993, Generation Y was a major segment of the consumer market that had not really been targeted, and this cohort or generation group was spending billions of dollars annually, much of which was for clothing. And 2 men actually found that few retailers targeted to this group, so they formed what they considered a consumer niche with little competition and focused specifically on targeting Generation Y. And actually, they started out first not with a retail store, but with creating catalogs or magalogs, which was a hybrid catalog and fashion magazine to reach their customer. And originally, they had college reps, so they would hire college girls who sold the product on different campuses. And the first year sales were only $139,000. However, once they had a large enough database of consumer information, they started to do mail order catalogs. And the company evolved from selling apparel and accessories through teens, through pure sales reps and catalogs, into a brick and mortar store and online retailing. And in 2003, so that would have been 10 years from when they started, they sold the company to a larger company for $50 million. So they came a very, very long ways in 10 years. But the key about this example is that they focused on what their market niche was and providing something that no one else was providing to a large or a major segment of the consumer market. Now we're going to look at purchasing a franchise operation, and the franchise operation is usually seen as a little less risky than opening your own business. And this is because there's less financial risk and less planning and startup activities because the company has already done much of the planning and the startup work for you. A franchise is when the right or the license is given to a group or an individual to sell products or services in a specific manner within a given territory. So you could actually have two different owners of the same franchise in a town. And by paying a franchise fee, the entrepreneur is given a format or system developed by the company, and they're given the right to use the franchisor's name for a limited time, because usually your franchise agreement will only be for a certain amount of years, and then if you don't perform well, they can always take away the franchise from you. Also, the entrepreneur is usually given assistance with the business operations. That could be that they help you with your personnel, with your marketing materials. They help you with management. They provide a lot of times the initial training in your operation manual. Also can help you find a location, and they sometimes offer basic ongoing support to their franchisees, such as workshops and technical assistance. And the greatest advantage to purchasing a franchise is that the franchisor has done most of the work for you. Buying a franchise reduces the risk by having an established company with an instant name recognition and a customer following. They usually tend to also have an appealing visual identity within the market. They have training techniques of how they've learned how to train people because they have many different stores that they've tested it out on. Also, they may save on supplies and inventory through quantity discounts that you will order together through the franchisor. And they also just have an effective way of operating the business because they've done this process over and over again. However, it can be quite costly, and the entrepreneur must relinquish significant control over the business because of the contractual agreements that they'll have with the franchisor. And also, there's no guarantee of success. So the key to success is finding a good franchise to buy. And a good franchise operation should offer three primary benefits. The first benefit will be experience and knowledge, and this is the most important benefit, and the franchisor should provide the management training needed to run the business effectively. Also, another benefit is being a turnkey operation, and that's one that is completely assembled to start operation and then leased or is sold to the entrepreneur to manage. So that means that they already have the building, everything's set up, all they do is turn it over to you. Usually the franchisor will help guide the franchisee through the early stages of the business to ensure success, since the franchisor's reputation and profitability is dependent on the future of the franchisee's success. So they're going to help you because they want you to succeed because you affect their image and their profitability. And the last primary benefit is you have a ready-made customer base. So it provides a faster road to success because consumers already know the store and already may shop it somewhere else. And they also tend to have a strong national promotion efforts through franchises, so you're getting your name out nationally. And they usually have already created a market niche and a demand for their products. However, there are some key disadvantages to a franchise, and one of the main ones is the related cost or fees. And some of the common fees are the initial franchise fee or startup cost to begin the operation, and it's often high and greater than what you would pay to open your own business. And it can be up to hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy in. And there may also be costs to rent, build, and equip your outlet. And you may have to purchase your initial inventory, insurance, and grand opening fees because they promote the new store for you. You may also have to pay a percentage of revenues forever to the franchisor, which will lower your profit margins. And you may also have to pay a monthly fee that will help pay for the company's national advertising expenses. For example, some franchises, they require up to 20% of gross sales to cover royalties, franchise fees, marketing, and advertising. And you have to pay these even if you have not earned a significant income. You may also have to purchase your supplies, fixtures, and inventory from the franchisor and purchase part of group inventory buys. So you may have to purchase things that you don't want to purchase, or you might be able to purchase these things cheaper somewhere else, but you're only able to purchase it through them. And one of the main reasons they do that is just so the brand, they have consistency in brand from one store to the next. Also, another fee that may be separate from the royalty is the advertising fee, and that's, as we kind of mentioned, to pay for a portion of the national advertising, and you may not have a say in how your advertising fee is used, so it may not necessarily go towards your store. Another disadvantage to a franchise is the lack of control of the business. Some franchises give you control, or they give you less room to be creative or vary your products. And these controls are implemented by the franchisor to ensure uniformity among their outlets and ensure quality is the same from one store to the next. And some typical controls that are usually set in place will be site approval. So whenever you're trying to pick your location, you'll have to get it pre-approved, and then you'll have to meet certain design and appearance standards that are set for a consistent image in every outlet. And also you'll have territory restrictions, and this may impede you opening additional outlets or moving to more profitable locations. So you maybe do really well and you want to open another outlet, but they may have restrictions saying that you have to have a certain population to open another outlet, or someone else may have already purchased the other outlet that's available. So those are things to also look at when seeing what is also available besides this store within your areas, or if you get the right to purchase another store in your area before someone else or within your territory. They also another control that can happen with a franchise is there can be restrictions on what is sold. You may only carry items specified by the franchisee agreement and may not be able to get rid of certain items that you don't want. So this can affect the amount that you can tailor the product to your specific consumer. So if they're not really great at tailoring the product from one geographic area to the other, you may get some products that don't do well in your area. Also, or you may have a product that does really well, but you have no way to reorder it and get more of it. Also, another control can be limitations on your method of operation. So you may have to operate in a particular manner, such as set hours of operation, and you can only use pre-approved signage in advertisements, and you may have to use certain bookkeeping procedures that they have in place. And also you may have to purchase your supplies from an approved supplier, even though you might be able to get them somewhere else cheaper. And another disadvantage is if the parent company loses reputation, then you will experience similar decline or negative publicity, and it may be difficult to exit your franchise agreement. They usually require a long-term commitment, and it cannot be just sold to anyone. So say they do have really bad publicity and sales are dropping and you want to try to get out, you may not be able to do so or sell it off to someone else. Another disadvantage is that after your franchise agreement is up, they may not renew your franchise, or they can increase the royalty payments or terms of agreement. So unless you have a contract that's set for a long period of time, they could come back and decide, well, you haven't had great enough sales, so to the level that we expect, so we're just going to take away your franchise. Or they can also come back and say, hey, you're doing great, let's increase your royalty payments because you're doing so well. So those are just a few of the disadvantages to owning a franchise operation. So looking at purchasing a franchise operation, this is just an example from your book of Apricot Lane Boutique. And there's an example of it on page 91 of your textbook. And Apricot Lane is a specialty store that offers affordable fashion jewelry, handbags, clothes, accessories, and gifts. And they have stores in Dallas and Fort Worth and Houston area. And they are actually a really neat concept and encompass a really wide inventory to make them more of a true boutique and to seem less like a franchise. And I also think you can tailor your merchandise to your store, because I looked on the Dallas website and the Peoria website, and they had totally different items online. So I do think that you may have more flexibility with this company to kind of tailor what products you buy to your customer base. Also, they had really low initial investment fees and royalty fees. So the initial franchise fee was only $29,500, and the royalty fee was only 5.5%, and you only have to pay 1% of advertising. So they said that the investment range that you would have to make would be around $127,800 to $373,300. So it was just a neat company. You can read more about them or go online and look at them, and they talk all about their franchise and what it takes to be a franchisee. I think it would be a great company that would do really great in a college town, because they have moderate to low prices and have a wide range of products that they offer. And a few more reasons why entrepreneurs may choose a franchise over starting their own business is that they may not have expertise in the industry or the desire to build their own business, and they prefer a low level of risk and a higher level of assistance. And they also believe that the franchise may offer a larger profit opportunity because they have a known name and brand and consumer base. So the last entry strategy into a market is acquiring an existing business. And there can be many advantages to buying an existing business, such as you can buy a business that is in a location that you want to do business in, and you're also buying that physical location that you will have, which can become a good investment. Also, when you buy an existing location, you tend to have fewer startup costs because they already have a location and everything you need for a store, so you're not having to build all those things or buy all those things. Also, you get an immediate income stream, unlike starting your own business where you have to develop your customer following. It can take 3 to 5 years to get to the financial point that an established business is at, so that's another less of a risk that you have with an existing business than starting your own business. And you can also acquire business experience from the owner of the business you're buying. Many times they'll stay on once they sell the business for a year and help you learn the process and how they do everything. Also, you can acquire a well-known business name like a franchise and a positive business with a positive business image and reputation, and that is also very helpful. And you can sometimes obtain low-cost financing for the business because the seller may allow you to pay them a percentage of the profits for the business by financing the business through the seller, so you wouldn't even have to get a loan. However, this does not always happen, but usually banks are more willing to fund the purchase of a known business with a proven track record and history of success than a startup company. So continuing with acquiring an existing business, the price you must pay for an existing business may be a challenge because of the increased cost of paying for the existing location, the fixtures, and the inventory. So there's going to be a lot of cost up front. And you may have to also pay for an intangible asset called Blue Sky. And Blue Sky is the dollar amount determined as a fee for the business's image or personality. And one disadvantage to buying an existing business is that you could inherit their problems, and it's difficult to determine from financial reports if the business is on an upswing, maintaining, or declining. Also, some problems run into when you buy an existing business is that their financials may give a false impression that they make a profit, and also their current inventory may not be selling well, so you may have trouble selling it. And the true reputation of the of the business and the owner is something that you can't really determine through the financials that they'll provide for you. Also, another key term is a turnaround buy or a salvage investment, and this is a business that is experiencing problems that the new entrepreneur believes they can resolve. So unlike when you go into a situation and you don't realize that the business is not doing well or that they have a bad reputation, with a turnaround or salvage investment, you know that. But you usually you need to go into a business like this already knowing what changes you need to make to turn the business around and to get them to where they need to be. And typically, the least expensive business to buy will be a turnaround or salvage investment, but you have to make sure that you have a solution to their problem and that you think you can make the business successful with a minimal investment. So you don't want to have to make a huge investment to turn a established business around. So looking at some important documents that pertain to existing business, when you go to buy an existing business, you're going to need an attorney and probably an accountant and a business broker for all the legal things that you're going to do, and also to ensure that you'll have legal credibility of the sale. And you also need a thorough inspection of the inventory, the equipment, and the sales from the existing company. So some important documents that you need is a letter of intent, and this will be drafted to the business you're wanting to buy, and it indicates that the prospective buyer is serious and you set a timeline for your negotiations. Also, upon the agreement of a price and other terms, the contract of sale is completed and signed, and the closing takes place. And a title search is usually conducted at this point to ensure that there's no recorded claims or liens against the property that you're wanting to buy. And next is the purchase agreement. And if the buyer is purchasing real estate as part of the transaction, a title search is conducted. And then a purchase agreement is drafted, which outlines the selling price, the terms of payment, and the items involved, such as fixtures, equipment, and inventory. And by conducting a thorough investigation of the company, it can be expensive and time-consuming, but once you do that, it protects you from future liabilities that you may not have been aware of, such as the lien on the property, or if they have a bunch of broken fixtures that you didn't know about, or inventory in the back that hasn't sold that they've had for years. Those are all different things that you need to know about before you purchase the business. And last, we look at the exit strategy. So we already talked about the entry strategy, but you also need to have an exit strategy for your business. And this is anticipating how the proposed company will eventually be sold or closed. And this is part of the business planning process. And it prepares the funder. This is part of the preparation that the funders often ask about. And many retailers have suffered great loss because they did not plan on how the business would be closed or sold. You can either exit the business through a direct sale, merger, acquisition, initial public offering, or joint venture with another company, or you can just have to close your doors, which is the one thing you don't want to have to do is your exit strategy. So some reasons to exit your business are financial constraints. So financially, you just can't make it. Health problems, relocation, too difficult to manage the operation, you just can't do it yourself. Decreases in sales and profits. You can't renew your lease, so you're going to have to move out. Also, new competitors can come in and take too much of your market share. It would be another reason you would need to get out. And selling a business can provide the capital necessary to start another venture. So if you see that you're losing market share, the earlier you get out, the better, because once your company shows declining sales, it can lead to financial disaster, and it's going to be really hard to find someone to buy your business. So it's imperative to plan for the exit early and sell wisely to allow for greater profit and flexibility. And you will get the most profit by selling the business when it's in the growth stage. And some funders will require a valuing and exiting plan before they will provide funding. So to see examples of those, you can read appendices B and C, and they discuss the exiting and valuing strategies that you may need for your business plan and to get funding through a bank. And this concludes chapter 5.